Hi, it's Alexis.
And Christian from Tiny House Expedition. And we built our tiny house way back in 2014.
With the help of friends and family, over 9 months of ups and downs and trial and error, it was all worth it in the end.
We built a cozy custom home of our own that led us to an adventure of a lifetime. And now we're working on a shuttle bus conversion.
In our DIY Tiny Home Build Stories series, we hope to inspire and empower you to take on your own build by yourself or with help.
I needed help. I definitely needed help.
My name is Cole.
And I'm Shelby, and this is Runa. And we all three live in this DIY tiny house. Building a tiny house alone is very difficult for someone who is not used to carpentry. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, clearly I knew how to use like a friggin' drill, but that's about it. So the challenging part, mainly in the end, was coming up with my own motivation to do it every day. I'm getting emotional. Yeah, to wake up and you're like, okay, so today I have to install the plumbing for my sink. And you're like, I know nothing about installing plumbing for my sink, so I'd spend like 4 hours on YouTube and then be exhausted from staring at a screen and then not want to do anything but have to do something. And then you try it and it's not quite right, and then you go to bed, and then the next day, all you have to do that day is that thing that you failed at yesterday. And after about 365 days of doing this, you're like, I'm done. Except you can't be done because you have this entire rest of this house to build, and the moving on, the progression of your life depends on you finishing it. The progression of your life depends on you getting up and conquering this stupid sink. This is my favorite part about the house build. The whole thing, it was miserable, except my gleaming uncle, my mother's brother. I'm getting emotional again. Gosh dang it. So, built the house from my dad's life insurance policy. My dad wasn't like a nice person. Wasn't the best dad he could be. And I got a dad. So I built this house on my uncle's property. He was gracious enough to let me stay there for 2 whole years. In the beginning phases, like while I was getting the walls up, while it wasn't boxed in, I was actually living in his spare bedroom, and they were feeding me, and like, they just took really, really good care of me. And to have like lost a dad, be building this house with his money, and to gain a dad, like, it was so beautiful. He knew how to do all the things that I didn't know how to do. I needed him if I was doing it alone. And anytime I had something that I couldn't do with my 2 little hands and my 2 little arms, I'd have my big, strong uncle come and help me out. Just no problem. It's like he very much enjoyed helping me, and I always felt like, you're a busy guy, like, sorry to ask for your time. He's like, let's go, like, just enthusiastic. And also when I had no enthusiasm or motivation for anything, he's just rock solid there. It's so good. I love that man. Another really rewarding aspect of having built it is that, like, I know where every single thing is. I have video footage of the house without the walls, so I know where the electric is, I know where the plumbing is, I know if I ever want to change anything, it's not going to be an inconvenience because I put everything in its place and I know how to take it apart. Also, just general handy skills. Like, I'm really grateful for that. It's so funny when I thought about building a tiny house. It's like, at the end of this, I'm going to have a tiny house. It's like, that's what I was thinking. Like, at the end of this, my uncle is going to be calling me to install ceiling fans in his adult family homes, you know, like silly things like that. And I really appreciate how it really makes you a good problem solver, like an expert problem solver. Like very frequently at work, it's like something's not quite running right or something's not moving the way it should be. And I'm like, well, let's break it down, look at it, figure it out. And that's a skill that I didn't have pre-tiny house, and that's huge because I feel like a more equipped human. One of the best secrets I could share with anyone is that you can do whatever you want to in a tiny house. You just have to formulate a plan to make it look good. You have to go a little out of your way one time, and then your display of things can be marvelous instead of disruptive. And I have really found a way to do that with my jewelry. It's all been creative. My jewelry display, I actually just took a little lap around the property that I was living on at my uncle's house. And there was literally a tree that they had downed, and I stole some limbs from it, and I cut them up and I spray painted them. And they're like something that someone would pay like $90 for at a high-class store. And they are just dried pieces of yard garbage. So one time I was in Habitat for Humanity resale store, and I found this really awesome IKEA mirror where it was a mirror bordered by a thick frame. However, it did not fit on my wall after the light switch and outlets got installed, but I loved the idea so much that I actually decided to make it on my own with the correct dimensions. So I actually went and I got a wall mirror, like a full body mirror from Walmart. It was like $7. And then I just made this with leftover wood from things that I had been doing in the house. So it was like a almost completely recycled mirror. Before I get too far, I actually went to a glass cutting company and they wanted to quote me like $80 for a mirror of this size. So I just went and got a cheap mirror myself and scored it myself because it was actually the exact width that I needed. I just needed less length. So I scored and just chopped that myself and embedded it into this cute little frame, which also acts as a little shelf here. These lights I got off of Amazon, and they were like $14. And I've been living in here an entire year, and they have not failed me yet. They do have an adjustable setting here. Let's test them where you can dim them down, because honestly, full brightness is a lot. I've actually had quite a few people come and say, oh my gosh, your bathroom lighting shows all my flaws. Whereas like, I really appreciate that as someone who's trying to do my makeup every day. I want to be able to see myself in this great intensity. It's honestly as good as daylight. So I really wanted like a crazy chandelier, and then upon looking at crazy chandeliers, they're like also crazy out of my price range. So I made something else work instead. I bought initially just a light fixture with like 6 of these crazy legs and figured I would figure it out after that. I initially had the idea of like finding some beautiful like piece of driftwood or like a crazy stick on a hike, and I was looking for that crazy stick for a whole year, never quite found it. And one day I meandered into a department store, found this like wall hanging mirror, and I just painted it. And upon being in IKEA, I fell in love with these light bulbs, and I didn't ever even think that I would have a use for them, but I just knew I loved the light bulbs, and it kept it in my mind. And so actually the light fixture came first without bulbs, and then the centerpiece that became a piece of art that looks like a part of a circus. And then I needed light bulbs, and I thought, what better than the light bulbs that I saw and couldn't forget from IKEA.
It's a beautiful piece of art, and I feel like very quintessential to who you are as a person to find used goods or cheap goods and turn them into something that kind of everybody that walks in the house notices. Like that's one of the first things I'd say people notice.
Also, as like this main grand room is being 50% of the house and 10% of the actual usage, it's something that you just walk in and kind of immediately notice. And like the lights, because they're covered on the bottom, it illuminates it. It's really like something to look at, a visual piece of the house. The trailer itself, brand new trailer, drop axles, 10 foot wide, built by the same company, Seattle Tiny Homes. They actually, like in the same warehouse, have a trailer building company. So got this custom built with the plans, and the trailer itself was $10,000. So right off the bat, the biggest chunk. So the house is certified as a park model RV through Washington Labor and Industry. If my information is correct, there are very few states where you can be certified as a DIY builder. And I just got really lucky. The only place that I had really to build was Washington, and that happened to be one of the states that you could go through this process for. The plans that I had in order to get it certified, that's first step, is you send your blueprints to the state and they go through them, make sure everything is where it needs to be. It's like $150 fee for them to just look them over. They got denied the first time, so then I had to send that same fee back, not to mention making that stack of photocopies was $100. They're basically everything that we sent you and scribbled all over, we need new fresh ones that are corrected. So, and then another $25 to ship them there. So the $2,000 for the plans that got drawn, then another $300, $400 into literally just the papers getting sent to them and their fees. And then every time an inspector came out, which I think was 3 times or 4 times, it was another $7,500 each time an inspector came out. So if anyone wants to do math, it's probably $3,000 extra for the certification. If you have thought thoroughly about having a tiny house, I'm sure you have seen tiny houses with the skylights above the bed. If you're wondering if it's a good idea, I'm sure everyone has their own opinion. My thoughts are, I love this window above my bed, and I would not change it for the entire world. I live out in the country, in the desert, and when the moon is full, you can literally see shadow on the bed. It's like you're looking at your lover in full daylight in the middle of the night. It's exceptional. I get to fall asleep looking at the stars when I'm not outside. I wouldn't change it for the world. It is a little bright in the mornings. Luckily, I perhaps, as a person who has spent a number of summers in Alaska, can sleep through light. If you can't, they got those little things go over your eyeballs. And it's really lovely to have light up here, especially natural light. The window's pretty big. It provides a lot of natural light. So even when I'm up here in the late afternoon, it's just sweet. It turns out you can also crawl through up onto the flat part of the roof. Advice would be about time. If you can be in a very comfortable life situation while you're building your house, whether you are building it on the property of the house you're renting, or just be somewhere where you have a support system, because there are a lot of days you're gonna need to drink a beer when you're done with work. You really need that refresh button after the frustrations. Another piece of advice, give yourself an entire year of planning time. Don't just jump into it. Really give yourself a cushion to think things through. go stay in tiny houses, like go to Airbnbs and spend some nights in them to figure out what you don't like about, you know, you're like, oh, I wouldn't want this, but like you really have to be inside of a tiny house to get like the idea of space. And if you're gonna be living in it with someone, like you gotta bring that person along too, see how you both interact in this small space. When you think about building your tiny house, just know that when your tiny house is like done, it's not done. It's just never gonna be done. Like it's your child and you're gonna live in it and find things that don't work for you. And then you're just always gonna be building things or painting things or changing things. And I guess I expected to be finished building a house. Like my certification, I'm like, it's done. No, it's gonna take another 2 years for me to call this thing finished. Even though we're living in it and everything functions, like it's still not done.
And you have to be okay with that.
You have to be okay with
accept
that. Yeah, yeah.
99% house.
You gotta have like more patience than you think you're going to need. You have to have that. Patience is huge. Mm-hmm. Every lesson, like everything that I learned building this house, which is so much. I learned so much. And the biggest things that I learned were things about me. It wasn't physical, wasn't mechanical, none of it. It was all life lessons.
Hey, it's Alexis again.
And Christian from Tiny House Expedition. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And to watch the full tour of the DIY tiny home you just learned about, click over here.